Good afternoon and welcome to the Chicago Consortium's discussion with Chicago's new directors. I'm Ellen Keith. I'm the board chair and I'm the director of research and access and chief librarian at the Chicago History Museum. I am thrilled that our sister consortium, the Black Metropolis Research Consortium, is co-sponsoring this event with us today. Chicago is a big city with room for many consortiums, and I urge you to check out the resources of the BMRC, which collects material for the Black experience. Let's see where I am in I think we're moving ahead. Thank you. I've got Jeannie Long, our executive director, is driving the wheel. So we'll start with our land acknowledgement. Chicago Collections Consortium acknowledges and is grateful for the Native peoples who laid the foundation for the city of Chicago and for the diverse Indigenous nations that reside in Chicago today. When you visit our member organizations and when you experience Chicago's outdoor spaces, we invite you to join in offering respect and gratitude to the many Indigenous peoples that reside in the Chicagoland region as well as their ancestors. Next slide, please. This is a hallmark of our consortium is our Explore Chicago Collections portal. So I urge you all to check it out. It's one-stop shopping. Type in a search term and you're going to see which of our wonderful member organizations have corresponding collections, along with a lot of wonderful digital images as well. So we all urge you to check out Explore Chicago Collections. And keep up with our events. We have a lot of wonderful events. The pandemic moved them all online into Zoom mostly. And they're all recorded. So if you are watching this later, it's because we've recorded it, but hopefully you're watching it live because we've had it at noon for lunch. So please check out our website for our upcoming events. Next slide. And we are so grateful to our generous supporters, Driehaus, Donnelly, Mellon, Wintrust, the Illinois Arts Council, and Terra, as well as a lot of our individual supporters who donate to keep our vision and mission of keeping Chicago's history accessible and freely open to all possible. Next slide, please. And again, for more information, check out our website and the BMRC's website. Okay, I am thrilled to dive into today's presentation with our three new directors, although I'm realizing we had a pre-discussion, maybe not so new at this point. It always takes a while to get people together. But Ellsworth Carmen, Executive Director of Oak Park Public Library, Jacob, am I saying it, Jacob Nadal, President, yes. Center for Research Libraries, and Zachary, I should have asked you the pronunciation of your last name before we started. I'm sorry, I don't want to bungle it.
Zachary Dmiterko.
Thank you. Okay, gentlemen, we're going to get going, and I'm going to start bopping around. I'll have the same questions, and I'll look at you and see who wants to take the first one to start. So you've each joined your organizations fairly recently. Will you talk to us about what aspects of their mission attracted you and what you'd like to know about your institution? I'm Zachary's to my left in my square. I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. As was mentioned, I'm Zachary Dmiterko. I'm the executive director at the Ukrainian National Museum, and I started about 11 months ago, last December of 2024. So I still feel new. Even if it's been about a year, I still feel new. There's always new things that I'm learning. Right now, I'm about in the midpoint of my career, but what really attracted me was the community. I myself was raised here in the Chicago Ukrainian community. And I was really inspired throughout my life by my grandparents through various members of my family to kind of preserve and keep our culture alive, the language alive. So for me, the museum and especially our community here in Chicago, the Ukrainian community, was a huge draw to this position. Especially in a time like this, where Ukraine is fighting for its very survival, this was an incredible responsibility and opportunity to take on. What I'd love everyone to know about is we do exist, and we've been here in Chicago for over 70 years. We are a longtime staple. We're not a new museum. We were originally on Chicago Avenue, 1952, and we have phenomenal collections. Everything in our museum is donated by the community, and we have objects that are almost 500 years old. So we have an immensely extensive archives collections from Ukraine, collections of items brought over by refugees. Um, there's even things that are here that aren't in Ukraine because they were destroyed under the censorship of the Soviet Union. So we're incredibly proud of our museum as a community. And there's many things worth finding here that might teach you a bit more about Chicago as well and your neighbors here in Ukrainian Village.
Oh, wonderful. Ellsworth, to you.
Great, thank you. I've been the executive director for the Oak Park Public Library for about 5 months now, so I still feel pretty new. But this is not my first time with the agency. So about 10 years ago, I was here as the manager of adult and teen services, relocated, and was a library director in Iowa for a number of years, and I'm now back. I was specifically drawn back to Oak Park because of the commitment to equity and anti-racism. This is a public library that has built its entire structure around trying to move the needle on some really important work. I also really appreciate the willingness of the organization to meet the community needs, sort of in terms of core library service, but also beyond. So we do a lot of referrals on social services for patrons facing housing instability and mental health needs, food insecurity, things like that. Um, so coming back to an organization that really aligns with my own values felt like a privilege and a really great opportunity. As far as what to know about Oak Park Public Library, I think we're a really unique public library. So we have the things that you'd expect in a public library. We've got comfortable seating, we've got a great children's area, we've got all of those amenities. But we also have some great special collections, including Frank Lloyd Wright, Ernest Hemingway, Open Housing Movement collection, which is about integrating housing in the area between 1971 and 2000, a transgender resource collection, some things that really to me stand out as ways to meet community needs in an unusual way. Um, this library also is very committed to lowering barriers to service and access. So we work really hard to be welcoming and open to all. And to be very candid, I also was drawn to this library because there was significant disruption in library administration a few years ago. And having an opportunity to come back and work in that complex interpersonal landscape at an organization that I love and I believe in, just really felt like a way to amplify and to bring the organization to a new place and kind of move through that hardship.
Excellent. Jacob.
Thanks, Ellen. I'll pick up where Ellsworth left off. That one of the things that drew me to CRL was the sense that this organization had gone through an important and difficult period of reevaluating its directions, its governance. I joke sometimes they renovated everything from the roof to the bylaws over the last couple of years, and so the opportunity to come in and both make sure that this community and this organization was headed in the same direction, but also to really be given the opportunity to figure out what the next act for CRL was going to be. It seemed like a real special opportunity and a real privilege. CRL has been around since 1949, started here as the Midwest Interlibrary Consortium, and has grown to now have 200 member libraries across the US and Canada. And our fundamental mission is to support the preservation efforts of our member libraries, to collect materials that might be hard to get, that deserve a place in the scholarly record, but really should be a shared responsibility, not the responsibility of any one sole library. And a special focus of CRL is global information, making sure that the whole world is well represented. And as we look to the future, I think a lot of what that means also is taking what we have developed here, an incredible multinational collection, and working not just on sort of access to global information, but global access to information and making sure that we're supporting around the world people's right to know, people's ability to do research. Right here at home, I mean, obviously Chicago itself is a very global city, but we also have some very special Chicago materials, especially like the ethnic press of Chicago. And so it's really great to work with other institutions in CCC to support people who want to do research on Chicago and understand sort of the diversity of this community, and as well as to be positioned in a place that is, as we say, sort of nonstop flight to everywhere from here. I think it seems like just a great location for an organization with this kind of mission.
Yeah. I'll say that one of the things I'm hearing from all three of you, and this is always understood in terms of, libraries and librarianship, but is that preservation of material, that access to material. But it feels like it's important to call it out now, given all the censorship that's going on.
Mhm.
So thank you. Thank you for those answers. I think that these are all wonderful organizations you're with, and your commitments to making information available is fantastic. And all three of you are leaders. So regarding leadership, what's your philosophy of leadership, and how have you been able to enact your leadership model? And I'll shake things up, and I'll start with Jacob now. You get to
All right.
talk twice in a row.
Yeah, I always say org chart upside down, right? That I'm the president and the director in the sense of leading the orchestra, not in terms of telling everybody what to do. Um, a place like CRL, a place like any of our organizations, they depend on the expertise and the insight and just the simple commitment of so many people. And I think that my role is really to make sure they have a good foundation beneath them and that I am really in tune with our members, that I see the world through their eyes, and that I can bring that vision back to my organization so that in turn, my directors, my senior staff, my subject matter experts can figure out what we are best capable of doing to make a difference for our members. But that finding ways to support and empower the expertise that we have, to me, that's just essential in an organization like this.
Exactly. Zachary.
So if I had to kind of sum it up in one word, I was thinking a lot about this question was to be humble. We work with subject matter experts, as Jacob just said, every day, and they know so many vast amounts of knowledge. So really coming into this role, it was learning to be humble, learning what they know and how to best support them in the work that they do. Not micromanaging, that's not my style at all, but definitely stepping in to do whatever's needed. I don't know compared to my colleagues here, but we have a very small organization. We have 3 full-time employees. So if I need to be downstairs, pulling chairs up or doing something, that's part of it. That's just making it work and making it run. Vision-wise, in terms of leadership, definitely the thing I've pushed for the most and support the most has been to really reach out and connect with our neighbors in Chicago, really kind of pull us forward into the future, gently but surely, because connecting with consortiums, connecting with fellow museums and libraries and partners is, I think, the future for the Ukrainian National Museum and growing our footprint in the Chicago community.
Ellsworth.
Those are beautiful answers, and I agree with lots of that. I would say for myself, I think of leadership really as being kind of a combination of like curiosity, authentic listening, and understanding systems. So I think that the leader's role is to take in all the information and figure out ways to leverage that knowledge to connect people and create sort of better service for the whole community. I love events like this because as we learn about each other's organizations, we can start seeing ways to amplify that and to get our people what they really need, even if it's outside of our own doors. So being 5 months in at Oak Park Public Library, I'm really just in that sort of input mode right now. So engaging with lots of stakeholders to learn what I can about what's working well, where are opportunities for growth and change, and what people want. So this is one of my favorite parts of being a director is the beginning where you're just kind of soaking up all of the information and then you kind of get to a tipping point where you start to see like, okay, I do know the landscape, but I'm able to start to make connections and to bring things together.
Mm-hmm. Thank you all. And I realized I omitted the fact that we will have time for Q&A. And I was reminded of that when I saw Q&A question in the Q&A. So moving on, talk to us about the changing needs of those that your organization serves. We're in a we're in a very tumultuous time right now. I think you've probably recognized my pattern. So Ellsworth, I'm going to start with you as the last person to talk.
Sure. So again, we're a public library, so we serve everyone. We are a medium-sized public library. We have about 130 staff. We welcome a little over 1,000 people per day in our physical locations, and then many, many more in our digital locations. Navigate a lot of challenges with our folks. So homelessness or lack of stable housing, mental health, addiction, financial hardship. One of the ways we do that is we have a social services and public safety department. So this is a group of staff who are specially trained and really effective at de-escalation, connecting people with resources, and just making sure people are supported in the ways that work for them. Because of this group's work and then also the rest of the staff, we see, I would say, fewer than average behavioral issues and other conflicts between the patrons and patrons and patrons and staff. But when they do arise, we're able to react pretty quickly. Some of the other, when I read this question, I started by just kind of making a list of like, what are these challenges? And I think probably all of us are dealing with AI and misinformation in terms of how do we protect the integrity of our collections and help our users understand sort of how these things intersect. We recently added a civic literacy librarian position, which is a full-time librarian level role, with the idea of we see a gap in some of our patrons' engagement with local government and in understanding. So trying to kind of take those steps where we can to fill in the blanks and to put experts in place who can lead the way on those charges. I would also note here that we spend quite a bit of time thinking about the changing needs of staff. And I think, we're all sort of in the information collections professions, and the way that staff experience this work now compared to even 5 or 10 years ago is very different. So things that we've done here are developing affinity groups for staff, having a staff well-being committee, other sort of staff-focused supports that help strengthen organizational culture and make sure staff feel connected, and when there are needs, that we can hear those needs and react the best that we can.
Thank you. Jacob.
Yeah, I would say that, the lion's share of CRL's members are U.S. higher education institutions. And obviously this is a year and an era when the compact between the federal government of the United States and its higher education institutions is being completely rewritten. And that creates some immediate just financial pressures that people are having to navigate. But I think it's also important to recognize just the degree of uncertainty that's been added. So even institutions that are financially healthy, may even be having banner years for enrollment, don't know how to chart their future anymore. And that uncertainty itself is a very destabilizing factor. So I have conversations about that with members probably every day of the week as we try to chart the future together. And I think it has reaffirmed for me the importance of an organization like CRL, because it's fully independent, because we are operated and governed by and for our members, to provide some stability and to be a place where our members still can take action and still identify some issues that we want to work on together collectively. We know that for some of our members, this is, a period when the bottom line is just going to catch up with a few of us. But we're also, because of that, in some ways, seeing this as a time when CRL has to invest even more and be a place that continues pursuing our goals. collecting and preserving materials, providing access to them, engaging with where research is going and the kinds of inquiry that people need to do. Again, at a time when maybe other parts of the sector are not certain they'll be able to or don't have the resources they're accustomed to having. It's a time when an organization like ours can step in and fill an important role. So we recognize that this may be a little bit of a high wire act for us for a couple of years, but also a really important strategic moment for us to do our part for the larger mission. I will say, alongside that, we have told ourselves never waste a crisis, right? A time when things are in flux is also a time when we can take some new permissions for ourselves. And so we're trying to look at all of the ways in which collective action, cooperative services can make a difference, and see if we can really take some strides forward and be a healthier, more resilient community as we travel through this.
Thank you. And that I think of Chicago Collections Consortium as well. We try to really be there for our members. Zachary.
So I want to first off say it's wonderful to hear from my fellow panelists how much work they're doing in so many different spheres, in so many different areas, and the challenges, some of which are the same. I think economically, that is one of the challenges we're also facing. We're not seeing it as acutely. We didn't rely on too many federal grants, but I know for many other museums that has been devastating. We've really been able to turn to state grants and local grantors. And thankfully, we have a very strong community. So some of our issues are vastly different than our neighbors. We have a very strong Ukrainian communities, and the private donations are really keeping us afloat in a time like this, helping us to kind of get through the times as they are. But we face some very unique challenges. Because we are a community-based museum, that is, an ethnic-based community museum, a lot of our membership is getting older. That is a crisis that's kind of been looming as membership ages out and new members don't seem to be joining. Young people my age and younger, even 10 years older, simply they're just not attracted. They're whatever it is, and that's been our kind of $1 million question, is figuring out what is going to get new members. There's another dual crisis really that we face, and that is, of course, the war in Ukraine, and that has pushed over a huge amount of new arrivals to the United States, and especially to Chicago. We are the second largest destination for Ukrainian refugees, asylum seekers, and the like, migrants. And that's very interesting because they're not settling here in Chicago where we are. They're settling in the suburbs. They're a population we really want to reach out and support and kind of cooperate with, but they're very far, and we haven't quite been able to get out into the suburbs because we're such a stationary museum. It's not easy to put our collections on a bus and do exhibits. So it's really been figuring out what can we do to, one, bring in and kind of enfranchise the Ukrainians who are recently coming over. How do we revitalize our member base? And then getting through the difficult financial times, just like our neighbors. So it's been a set of challenges. We'll see how it all turns out, but we're pushing for more connections and for revitalizing the museum in whatever way we can.
Thank you. Okay, we're now bringing ourselves into it. How do each of you in your roles as directors hope to leverage the power of networks or consortium like the BMRC and CCC? And Zachary, back to you.
Yeah, I think consortiums like this has been one of the big goals of the Ukrainian National Museum this year, to reach out, to be a part of more community project outreach. I think when we work together, anyone in the collection sphere, the preservation, the library sphere, all of that, you can compound each other's reach. You can learn from each other. You can share. You can see, well, oh, that's interesting. You all are having this kind of issue. We can maybe help in this regard, or working things out and understanding that it's a mutually supportive system. When you're alone, when you're just one museum or one library, it is much, much harder to overcome any obstacles or to overcome anything than it is when you're together in a group. It's just much stronger. And I'm incredibly happy. I know we've submitted before to the consortium, to the Chicago Collections Consortium, and we look forward to continuing to be a part of it.
Thank you. Ellsworth.
Yeah, I'll build on that answer a little bit. I think that established consortia like this can be a really powerful vehicle in raising the awareness of what's available to our communities, and again, thinking not just immediately in our community, but what is regionally available, and connecting patrons and staff with the resources that they need. I think again about staff as well, and the power that consortia have to offer staff connection with other people doing similar work, doing work that they might aspire to do, doing work that they have expertise in, and to feel that support and celebration in those connections. And that includes talking about shared challenges, but also about opportunities, and then getting into even logistics like maybe you need a grant partner, maybe, things like that, that just if you know each other are infinitely easier. And I would say personally, having a group of directors that I can reach out to, whether that's for something serious or just sort of I need to talk through something, is a really amazing. And groups like this, I think, give you an immediate group that you can find people to connect with. So I think that's really important.
Definitely. And I know my team really enjoys when you talk about how staff feel and being able to be part of a consortium. My team really enjoys their participation in CCC. Jacob.
Yeah, membership organizations, associations, and consortia are a really crucial piece of sort of the research library landscape. That's how a lot of business gets done. It's how a lot of infrastructure gets built. And I will pick up on something that Ellsworth said, that partnership has become a really important word for us. We're in the end game of a strategic planning process at CRL. And one of the things we've been asking ourselves over and over again is of the myriad of things we could do and the myriad of things that we have some investment in, which ones does CRL itself need to particularly own and lead? And where are there areas where really there is another group, often a consortia, that works in this space, and it's stronger for us to partner with them and help to coordinate activity? And I think that question is important at a time when everyone has to be conscious of value, and we also want to protect these organs of our profession, that our profession particularly controls and guides. The ability of a consortium to act on behalf of its members, for its members, really important in a time like this where a lot of the landscape is changing. So I think when we think about consortia and our relationships at CRL, the question of where do we own an issue versus where do we partner with someone, tremendously important. And also we see this just as a really important time for us to be talking to our peer consortia, and making sure that we each sort of understand what our value proposition is for our members, and that that's strong, and so that this is a time when the resilience of our whole sector is going to get tested a little bit.
Definitely. Another question, and I know you all have sort of touched on this individually, but to be quite frank, how has your organization dealt with or responded to the current economic crisis? And I'm going to flip things up and go to Ellsworth now.
Sure. I think of this in a public library as kind of a two-sided question. Just for context, our budget is funded about 96% through local property taxes. So some of the fluctuations that libraries with different funding models are experiencing, we have not been touched by yet. There's a lot of concern about how libraries with more IMO funding or soft funding, how the things that we cooperate on will be affected. So interlibrary loan, that kind of thing. So lots of communication, lots of collaboration around kind of how do we keep those as seamless as possible. I would say that our funding model, I just used it as an example of being a little bit more resilient. But right now, Cook County property tax disbursement is significantly delayed. So the vast majority of our funding is sort of held up in this process. And that requires some thinking and some planning to get through till that disbursement happens. We've put a lot of energy thinking about how do we do the outward facing work in this, you use the term current economic climate. So being a public library, again, thinking about how to support our community, and that could look as basic as adding functional items to our circulating and in-house collections. So maybe we add sewing machines, maybe we add, laser levels so that we can kind of help reduce that burden on our community who needs access to things. And also thinking about offering programming around understanding Medicare, understanding Medicaid, sort of understanding what are the social supports available, maybe not through the library, but that we're able to help educate about. Again, going back to sort of our organizational budget, we have an elected board of trustees that governs the library, and we've newly formed a finance committee from that group. So part of the way we're responding to changing economic realities is to make sure we have a group of trustees who are really engaged around the budget and can speak at a significantly deeper level than most folks can about sort of how do we budget, what does that look like, what can we shift very quickly with, what can we not, and that's been helpful as we think about telling the story of our stewardship. I don't know how this would compare to other panelists, but around 75% of our budget goes to personnel. So when it comes to thinking about how do we flex and move as economic realities change, we do have limited flexibility in that without making some painful choices. And we are not there yet. We're not thinking about that right now. We just had our fiscal year 26 planning sessions, and we feel really good about what next year looks like. But when I do think, in my director role as what if finances changed in a different way, that's something that I think about a lot, is how do we balance how would we change our budgeting when so much of it is dedicated to our talented and powerful staff.
Mhm. And I'm speaking for my own institution. Yes, personnel costs are the bulk of our expenses. Jacob.
Similarly, right, of course, personnel is a big part of our costs. Though I will say we're a little different. Partly just I have somewhere between 5 and 6 million items in the collection right above my head here, and we have a substantial collections budget for acquisitions and programs that we run every year as well. So we're a slightly different ratio, but yeah, personnel is important, and we made a few moves earlier in the year, actually to sort of rebalance our payroll, knowing that we had some key positions we wanted to add to the organization, that were at the staff level, the sort of positions that really connect with our members and provide services. And then we wanted to make sure we had protected funding to be able to do that over the next 12 months, whatever happened. I'm happy to say 2 of those positions are in recruitment right now. So protecting personnel, thinking about how we retain talent is certainly important. It's not property taxes for us. It's member dues are, upwards of 90% of our funding. And so we are really downstream of 200 institutional decisions and 200 institutional environments. And so this particular year, our fiscal 26 was a relatively normal fiscal year. What we're anticipating, though, is that as we roll through every year, that's really when changes in the financial sector are going to catch up with us more. So we're watching to see sort of what happens as we go forward. We also keep an eye on tariffs. Traditionally, the kind of materials we deal in have been exempt from tariff. That is not necessarily and may not be the case anymore. So the cost of acquiring library collections materials may rise. Even if publications themselves remain exempt, the paper and cloth that they are made out of is not. So it's also a time when we're watching buying power in publications. And in our sector, a huge amount of where the library budget goes is licensing resources, databases, journals, publications. And so watching what's happening in that commercial sector where there's a lot of consolidation and a lot of private equity money is tremendously important. One of, I think, one of the most important things we do is for our own members and with other consortia coordinate so that we have a really strong negotiating strategy as we kind of try to shift the library marketplace. So yeah, we expect it to be a pretty complicated few years as we navigate what's happening in a lot of different factors at the market all at once.
Mhm. Oh, definitely. Zachary.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I've touched on it a little bit, but this is a good opportunity to go a little bit more in depth. We touched on grants, so that's shifted as well. When it comes to staff and payroll, so actually the executive director position here was it was an undefined position before I came in, and so that's been an increase. We've seen an increase in payroll as well. We used to be run by a completely volunteer board, and over the years that's changed. So it's really impressive. We do have a smaller budget. We're a smaller museum, even though we've got a large footprint, a large building. One of the most interesting things is because we are community based, as I mentioned earlier, membership dues, but it does give us a sense of stability. We haven't been terribly impacted by the markets or by the economic situation. There was exceptions, as I mentioned, but one of the most interesting and for me exciting things is that we have a lot of flexibility. Being a smaller museum, there's different ways to kind of open up some revenue streams, be it through gift store sales, be it through events, be it through fresh new exhibits. It's been a lot of fun and a lot of trial and error and successes, and sometimes, oh, this could have gone better. Was trying to see what other ways can we bring in some money? How can we get creative in a time like this, and make sure that we make ends meet. But overall, economically, it's still very stable. There's been definitely some changes. I know we're very grateful that we're not as hard hit as some of our other partners. I know certain organizations and museums were completely reliant on federal funding, and that's just, my heart goes out to them terribly because we're in a more privileged position in that regard. But it has been an interesting challenge. Thankfully, we haven't had to cut anybody or anything. We've been good with our resources. I think it's a part of the communities. We always really take care of, okay, this is money given to us by our neighbor right here who's going to see exactly what we do. So it's got to be accounted for. And that's been wonderful in that regard.
Thank you all. We came to the end of the questions you received in advance, but because we have a little time before we turn it over to Q&A, I'm going to throw you guys a curveball and you get to volunteer to answer it. So, staff fatigue. How are you dealing with staff fatigue?
I was actually just giving my staff a shout out. I'm going to answer this in the most literal way I possibly can. Um, we had both of our elevators down for maintenance on Friday, and the champs here at CRL up and down 4 flights of stairs got every research request out and on the scanner or in the mail. I have to say that like our staff, the level of commitment, the connection to the organization, it's really moving. And I think that when I think about the challenges we face as a leader, the most important thing to do is to be frank and honest with people about where you are in decision making. Uh, some of the things ahead, we could very realistically have decisions we're making that are going to be made quickly, that are going to have to be made without the kind of consultation we would like to always offer, that may have to be made with some degree of confidentiality. And when you can do that and tell staff, I had to make this decision quickly. There's information I am not able to share right now, but here's what I'm thinking about. Here are the principles I'm working by. People can hear hard things and understand that organizations have to make hard choices. What people can't do is be left in uncertainty or left in the dark about whether decisions are being made and whether leadership knows what's going on. And I think that that's a really crucial principle for me when I think about times where there is some uncertainty or some change. The other thing we've tried to do is just be frank with our staff about that we're one part of their lives, that they have uh, personal leave that they should take, that CRL will close for holidays as we plan to, that we would rather have them take a day to be healthy and rested than not, that we really want them here for the long haul, right? And that we'll figure out how to make it through today and next week. We really want you, part of this organization for a longer period than that. And I think it's important that you just constantly give staff that reassurance. And to a certain extent, it's sometimes hard for leaders. We don't always control our own schedules, but that you try to model that as well, right? And let people know that that's okay. And set tone starts at the top, right? So we have to always be sensitive about that.
Definitely. Ellsworth or Zachary, want to take that on?
Thank you. Yeah, so much of what Jacob just said, I fully agree with, and do my best to do. I would say, just to reiterate, that the active communication is, I think, one of the biggest pieces, because fatigue is exacerbated by being worried about things that we might know the answer to. So even if it's incomplete, or it's really not what folks want to hear, being able to say, this is what's happening, this is what we're doing, this is what's going to happen next. And we do that a few different ways at Oak Park Public Library. We do a very regular Friday communication to all staff that kind of goes over some different things. Leadership, attends department meetings as needed to sort of talk about things in person. One of the things that we're struggling with staff fatigue right now is there's been significant ICE presence in our community. And that is as counter to our organizational mission and vision as anything could be. So sort of coaching staff through, what does that mean? How do we respond? What are our expectations? It's a great example of giving all the information is the right thing to do, even when it doesn't feel good. You still have to do that. It's your responsibility. I'm a big feelings person. I work hard to validate feelings and to recognize that we all have them. And it's okay to talk about that and how your work intersects with your feelings, and taking time to connect with staff, however it works for them. So one of the first things I do when I come into an organization, and this sounds silly, but I really recommend it. I I make sure that in my work devices that I can text with staff, because I've found that depending on where people come from, how old they are, all these different things, sometimes folks who would never think to come to your office or send you an email are very comfortable sending a quick text, and it just gives another opportunity to connect. And I think, again, people feel less fatigued when they feel heard and they feel like they're part of something. And another piece, this is kind of basic, but recognizing staff work, I think helps make sure people know that I see as the director, and I can amplify that in front of the board and other stakeholders, I think, in a way that really feels good to people, just to know that, all right, so what I'm doing is connected to our organization's vision, it's connected to these bigger projects, and that's being shared.
Thank you. Zachary.
I'd like to echo what my two fellow panelists have said. And I think, especially when it comes to the situation with ICE, that's been a big fear for our staff. We do have staff too who, it's just a threat in our community, especially. As I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of Ukrainians who have arrived here to under what's essentially temporary protected status. And so that's always top of mind. That's always an added stress on top of the staff. And um, it's been a lot of giving a lot of grace to staff to take the time off that they need to, have a place. Not everyone's going to have a good day every day, and just understanding that, just saying, yeah, these are really tough times. We hear you. We want to recognize that, and I think being a smaller organization, we get to have a bit more of a hands-on touch with that. And that's gone a long way, and that's really been the approach, because we can't do everything. And again, as what Jacob even said, this is just one part of a person's life. There are so many other things going on. It doesn't make sense to have, um, you know, endless anxiety coming from a job that's not life or death, when there are certain things that can be absolutely life changing, in a person's life. So that's been our approach, is just a lot of grace given, grace given.
Oh, this has been such a wonderful conversation. And now we're going to turn it over to the Q&A we have from our audience members. So the first one is, many thanks to all. How do each of you reach out to your communities with PR and marketing?
I could talk a little bit. I can take the first question. We do a lot of social media. We find that our audience is primarily on Facebook. It's older. We've done great analytics to kind of recognize what is our audience, what are their interests. So our main ways of getting the word out has been social media, email lists. So we have our listserv that we consistently keep up to date. We use Constant Contact. On top of that, we have regular mailings, especially during fundraiser times. As mentioned, our membership is quite old school. We could say, really appreciate mailing. They really appreciate mailing. You would not believe how many things would, me growing up in the technology age of email, I'm amazed that everything still comes in via check and letters and all sorts of things. So that's been fantastic. Instagram to a certain degree, and LinkedIn to a smaller degree. But getting dedicated and consistent content on social media has been fantastic as well. Oh, and media outlets. Sorry, I'll add, media outlets are your best friend.
Yeah, I agree with lots of that. I think as a newer director, connecting with those media outlets, getting familiar with the style and content that tend to come out of different publications and even different reporters is really important, so that you can be best prepared to engage around different topics. We have lots of newsletters, and we have a web page that kind of lists them all out. I'm happy to, I don't know if I can share that in the chat or if there's a different way to do that, but it's easily found on our website if that's better for folks. We do significant email communication. I don't have it in front of me, but I believe we have about 61% of the households in our service area have active library cards. And with our active card holders, we do some pretty significant email communication, some social media, and we're talking about what is our future with social media, thinking about as the reliability of that information changes and the politics of those of social media sites. So I'm excited to have these conversations moving forward. Just in a more logistical way, we had a long-term director of communications and public relations relocate to a different state for a new opportunity a few months ago. So we're in the final interview stages for that position, and I think that we have a great grasp right now on how to leverage our PR and marketing tools, and I'm really eager to engage with our incoming director to learn more about what they could see in our future.
I can give a slightly different perspective. Because CRL in many ways is a research library where we're a little bit of a backstage organization. And so I can probably give you a better answer to this question at about 3 o'clock after I've talked to my leadership team today, because one of our agenda items is restructuring our newsletter, and an ongoing conversation about communication, because uh, as Ellsworth said, we've really stepped back from a lot of social media. We tend to be pretty active on LinkedIn. It's a fairly neutral professional platform, but the type of discussion, the politicization of some other platforms have made us a little skeptical of the value there. We've heard from our members that in some ways less is more. A more occasional, more substantive communication is what they want from us. But the counterpoint to that is we have heard a lot of requests from them for engagement, and so we've really been trying to think about, in some ways, co-working and how we make sure that we are present and available as a resource in their day-to-day professional lives. And that's goes back to something I said earlier about kind of rethinking our payroll and our organizational chart. Do we have the people who are really there to connect to our community, and that personal connection, that personal engagement, really probably more important for us than any newsletter or marketing plan right now.
I just want to add one thing to that. I I think about PR and marketing in terms of sort of library ambassadors as well. So we have, like I said, we're governed by an elected board. So we have a, a group of stakeholders who's really invested and making sure that we get the right information in the right formats to that group to be able to speak both casually and in more structured environments about what we're doing and why feels like an important part of our overall strategy. And that's another reason to keep staff informed.
Mhm.
There are so many benefits of that, and one of them is then when they're shopping at the co-op and somebody says, "Hey, I think I saw that the library is doing this program. Like, what do you know about that?" That they're able to say, "Let me tell you what I know, and also let me tell you who you could reach out to for more information." Because I think in our community, I call us a high accountability community. There's lots of interest in what we're doing, lots of eyes on us, and that's so great. And to maximize it, we want to make sure that we have lots of ambassadors throughout the whole community.
Thank you. And both Ellsworth and Jacob have put in links in the second question. That's, are there e-newsletters for those who would like to subscribe and any webinars to attend? So thank you for that. And then I think we've got time for this last question that came in. Although I guess we could be here all day with this question. Do you think the archive profession in the USA is ideologically or politically diverse? If not, is that a good thing or is it problematic?
I don't have polling data on this, and genuinely, I would be interested to see such information. So I think it's something that, well, I don't have an answer and would be reticent to share any sort of just hunch. This is a really important issue for us to reckon with, right? Like, whatever your opinion on what's happened in the U.S. political climate is, and I say this as a recovering federal government employee that was strictly conditioned to be nonpartisan. There's clearly a big disconnect, and there's clearly a lot of distrust, and so this is an area where whatever the reality is, the perception is important as well, and the value of our profession as something that people can look to as a trusted broker, a trusted source of information is, I think, very critical right now. And the polling data I have seen, the information I have seen, suggests that we still do own some hearts and minds in the sense that the library, the archive, the museum are reliable places, that they are trustworthy places. But I think about this a lot, that I want to be very conscious of protecting that role, and protecting the sense that everybody has a place here. We will listen to everybody. We will have a place for every voice and opinion in a way that is constructive and reasonable. It's a really crucial time for us to be aware of aware of these perceptions.
Mhm.
This is a complicated question, and
I
I'm
know.
going to speak very briefly because I'm not in the archive profession. I'm in the public library profession. I went to library school right at the end of the idea that a good collection was a balanced collection, and that for every point of view, you'd have the opposite point of view. Um, and again, my education was kind of right at the tail end of that, so I got different inputs around that. And in public libraries, I think the way that you navigate this is to be the library your community needs. So that's going to look very different depending on where you are. And I don't think it's a disservice to have materials that reflect the politics and the ideology of the people that you serve. I would add to that, libraries have come a long way in their responsiveness to material needs. So we have easy, low barrier ways to request information. So whether that's interlibrary loan, article request, purchase suggestions, we have a really easy web portal for folks who want to suggest a program or even lead the program. So I think that is my answer as a non-archivist public librarian.
I actually really appreciate that answer from Ellsworth because I'm also not an archivist. I'm not trained as an archivist or librarian. And as a museum, we do have very extensive archives. Um, and so just hearing that response is good because that gives that gives a lot of comfort. It's difficult because ours is really nationally based. You know, we find it if you're coming for Ukrainian archives, that's what you're going to find here. It's Ukrainian archives, and it's going to reflect our culture. We don't have Polish archives. You go to the Polish Museum for Polish archives. So we almost have just a completely different experience of this currently. So both that and as an archivist, I really can't speak to the question. So I appreciate the answers from my panelists, fellow panelists up here.
So we have a couple more minutes for the final question. Are you connected to any professional library associations?
Yeah, I mean, I'll jump in. Probably predictably, the American Library Association, and particularly the Association of College and Research Libraries, and what's called CORE, which is the part of the essentially the technical services and preservation side of the association. I would also, commend to people's attention the American Institute for Conservation, which covers libraries, archives, and museums. And I also belong to an organization called the U.S. Committee of the Blue Shield, which is the U.S. branch of an international federation of organizations that work on issues of cultural property protection, something that's especially critical when, we live in a world where we have active war in areas where cultural heritage is at risk. And the USCBS is probably worth a look for a lot of people here. Great programs, great webinars, and a great mission.
Associated with a number of different professional associations, ALA as well. I would say we have membership, I would guess, in every division, if not every division, pretty close. And the State Library Association, Illinois Library Association, we're actively a part of. We are also part of a group called the Urban Library Council, which is uh, mostly US based, but not completely, library association that is mostly folks who serve urban environments. We're on the smaller side of libraries that participate in that, but we really gain a lot and are able to participate pretty fully. They have conferences and different events. The library, we also function a lot like a business. So we have people doing lots of other work too. So we have staff who are involved in HR associations and finance associations, things like that. We are careful to integrate funding for those memberships into our budget because again, we think that collaboration and that learning and growing opportunity is so critical for our organizational success.
I'll say specifically, there aren't any library associations we're particularly active in. The biggest is we do have a very strong partnership and membership in the Chicago Cultural Alliance. So that's an alliance, of course, of many different museums and cultural partners. And that has been a place where we have been able to connect more with our fellow Cultural Alliance members, be it museums in particular, or the Chicago History Museum, I know, is definitely a part of it. They hosted recently. And so that's been one of the biggest resources in that regard.
Well, we're just at 1 o'clock, and I cannot tell you what a shot in the arm this has been. I have so enjoyed this conversation. All of you are so thoughtful, caring about your organizations, your teams, and preserving history and making things accessible. I have so enjoyed it. Thank you all. Jacob, Ellsworth, Zachary, very grateful to you all. For those who attended, thank you. If you're watching this later, thank you. Jeannie will edit it and make it available, and it will go out. It'll be on our YouTube page, and it'll go out in an email, I believe. Jeannie will correct me if I'm wrong, but thank you all so much. Have a wonderful Tuesday.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.